The Shipping Association of Jamaica provides labor to the Port of Kingston. Essentially, we had two groups: permanent workers on one hand and also casual employees. There were several limiting factors related to our joint labor agreement that prevented us from utilizing the permanent workforce as we needed. We saw telephone recruiting, ADVANTUM eLabour as it's called, as a solution to that problem. Permanent employees, based on their contract with the unions and us, were prevented from working 2 successive shifts after a night shift. They were supposed to be home resting. However, that prevented workers from working the 3rd successive shift, which is the following night. And simply because they were to be home resting, so they could not have been recruited. And recruiting prior to eLabour involved a worker visiting the Shipping Association's recruiting center, waiting on prescribed times, listening for your man number to be called based on a rostering system. And essentially that's how you will receive work. Telephone recruiting, eLabour, fixed that, because essentially the system was designed to allow an employee using a unique PIN number and his man number to access eLabour via the phone or a web interface and be assigned jobs. Casual stevedores would come to the recruiting center, and it would not be unusual for an individual to spend the entire day without being assigned. Because the process at the time is that all permanent stevedores would first need to be assigned work before a casual. So it would not be unusual for a casual employee to report to the recruiting center at 8 o'clock in the morning and not be assigned work until 2 p.m. And at 2 p.m. when the casual employee receives that work ticket, it may very well be for the 11 p.m. shift, or worse, 7 a.m. the following day, which left the worker with a dilemma. Do I travel back home to return to work at 11 p.m.? This is after spending the entire day, mind you, at the SAJ. Or do I stay, do I find somewhere to get a rest, to then start working at 11 p.m. for an entire 7 a.m. shift? So telephone recruiting significantly made life easier for the SAJ stevedore. It meant that you, from the comfort of your home, during prescribed windows, take up your phone or your computer, access the system, which had rules built into it. Essentially, SAJ stevedores in many instances are multi-skilled individuals. So the man who is a lasher on a vessel, it's not unusual to see him also trained as a gantry crane operator, truck driver, or even a stevedore coordinator. So telephone recruiting allowed us to put in respective skill sets. We were able to rank those skill sets. So a crane operator is harder to find. There are smaller in numbers. So of course, the worker's primary skill would be set at crane operator. We'd look at what is second in ranking, what is third, whatever. Terminals would make labor orders using a web interface as well, which would get to the recruiting center. We would review those orders, accept them, and they would automatically populate the work system. At prescribed windows, workers would then start the calling process. Telephone recruiting allowed 26 workers to call the system at any one time, which meant that a process to recruit an order for 200 workers, which would have taken anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, was reduced to several minutes. 26 workers calling the system simultaneously. In 10 minutes, you were able to recruit 200 shifts of work. Different shifts, different skill sets. So essentially, we operated 2 recruiting windows each day. Those are the periods where employees were expected to use their company-assigned cell phones to access labor. With an additional 300 people, we were not able to provide that new group with cell phones based on the agreement. So the recruiting team had the responsibility of calling all of these workers to offer work assignments. You can imagine that when you are depending on a cell network, you are trying to reach 200 people. You have drop calls, you have persons who did not answer on the first call. So you'd make several calls just to reach an employee. That process in itself took several hours. So the recruiting team, who were accustomed to going home at about 5 o'clock in the afternoons, were now going up to 11 and 12 o'clock at nights just to satisfy the labor demands. Again, we needed to confirm with the terminals the persons that were assigned. So telephone recruiting came at the perfect time to handle that type of situation. So these 200 people that were needed for the 11 p.m. shift, in 10-15 minutes, they were all making calls using a CUG phone into telephone recruiting. Their skill sets were matched with the labor orders in the system. Persons were assigned. Those jobs went to a spool file. At the end of the recruiting process, we were able to download those labor orders sent to the terminals via PDF. The recruiting team would then generate physical work tickets from the spool files, and a member of the recruiting team would then have the responsibility to simply go to the terminal's gate and hand these work tickets to persons who were assigned work. That significantly changed the dynamic. We were accustomed at the recruiting center to have droves of people coming in each day. It was home away from home, essentially. They had lockers there. There were recreational activities. The occupational health nurse was stationed there. Offices, their canteen. When telephone recruiting started and the workers were no longer required to spend that time at the recruiting center, we then found ourselves in a situation where we had 6,000, 8,000 square feet of space that was not properly utilized. Telephone recruiting allowed us to sell that building, which was located at a separate address from the SAJ's head office. We were able to sell that building and move into smaller space at the Shipping Association's main building. That allowed us to save on electricity, security cost, just about all the inputs you can think of that were duplicated in having a separate facility. We were able to make that transition by virtue of the efficiency of telephone recruiting. There are some drawbacks. What that also did, despite the positives, was to reduce the interaction that we as management, supervisory level staff had with the workers, because in the new paradigm they would only come to the recruiting center or HR department if they absolutely needed. Jobs were assigned via phone, the work ticket was presented to them at the terminal gate, and that reduced the interaction. So then we were forced to find new initiatives, different ways of keeping that contact, which we were able to do successfully. But at the end of the day, the significant savings that were accrued, and also the fact that it made life easier for the average worker, was really what was important. ADVANTUM eLabour has been a game changer. It has helped to improve the quality of life of our stevedores. It has brought cost savings to the organization. It has improved our communication and response time to the port facility. And I would not hesitate to recommend this application to port environments or other industrial environments, given the impact it has had on the organization.
The calling system has improved the way we port workers get assigned work. Before, in the older days, you normally had to come to the wharf from 10 in the morning and sit until 6 in the evening without the certainty of getting a work. With the calling system, you can call in either on your phone or you can do it through the website via the internet. That, it saves times, it gives you time to do other things while you secure an assignment for the port. The thing that it takes away from the port is the unity and the camaraderie of the workers, where we would all gather and get to do things and get to know each other better. But it improves us, it's more efficient in that it saves time and save expenses and give us a more efficient way of working.
"11 years later, moving with the technical evolution, the eLabour application has changed, offering a portal to set labor and skill requirement, schedule and deploy workers on shift, real-time alerts to all parties, and communication with port workers and stevedores using an app on their mobile device. With ADVANTUM eLabour, you can effectively manage labor resources, improve labor efficiency and productivity, reduce operational costs, receive insightful analytics and reports to assess and manage performance, seamlessly interface with ADVANTUM payroll application, labor scheduling and management, set labor requirements and work skill definitions, optimize labor coverage and identify training needs by scheduling by skill sets, process wages for hours worked when interfaced with ADVANTUM payroll, workforce planning and labor forecasting, build complex rosters based on skills, preferences, and availability, group employees on the various shifts, build workforce forecast plan for each department, worker portal via app or web interface, actual time and attendance updates, track projects and labor activity accurately based on hours and costs, gain comprehensive workforce reporting on employee attendance, real-time alerts of staffing anomalies. ADVANTUM, creating efficiency through technology.